Coronavirus. I'm sure you're sick of hearing about coronavirus. You know, the media has played this up. It's almost like they want a zombie apocalypse to actually happen because it'd be good for ratings. It would help them sell more ad space for a higher price. You know, it's so bad. I listen to CNBC all day long. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that. I mean, I have no life. And as I'm driving in the car, in between sales calls, that's all I do. And all they do is talk about coronavirus and supply chain and how it's going to be affected and blah, 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 blah. It's so bad that they even have a daily, like, hour-long special after the markets close where they do nothing but talk about coronavirus and updates. You know, even though we're at, 1,500 people have died tragically from it. But 60,000 people died annually in the U.S. from influenza. So let's just take that for scale purposes and compare it. There are 1.2 billion people in China, 300 million people in the U.S. Do we really have a pandemic on our hands? You know, I guess when I go back and watch this video in a few weeks or maybe a year, maybe I'll have a different perspective on it, and maybe I'll end up deleting it. But the reality is, it's the media selling you something, and unfortunately we're all consumers of it, and we all buy it. But how does it affect you? Well, here in the U.S., maybe you don't think that it does, but there's something called supply chain that will definitely have an impact on you. This happened at a very, depending on how you look at it, opportune time or inopportune time. The lunar holiday, or what people in the West call Chinese New Year, is very similar to the Christmas season in the U.S. in that it's a time when many people are off work and they travel, and what makes this such an potential impact for the consumerism lifestyle that we all lead is that a lot of people in China haven't even gone back to work yet. We're about a week and a half to 2 weeks after most of the factories were scheduled to reopen. Most of the factories were scheduled to open full-fledged back on the 10th of February. Today's the 18th. And more than a week later, some of the factories that my vendors that I work with, do business with, haven't even opened yet. So pending orders, product that is now starting to run out is that much farther back from when it comes back to open. So typically when you're doing business in China during Chinese New Year, you don't want your product to be built either right before the Chinese New Year or right after, because for obvious reasons. It's the same reason why people joke when they buy a brand new item and it falls apart. Well, it must have been made on a Friday, or it must have been made on a Monday. Well, it's kind of the same thought. So when a product is made in China right before the holiday, sometimes it's rushed, and when it's made after the holiday, it's not necessarily rushed, but in some cases factories can lose up to 40% of their workforce, and they have to retrain new staff. They have to hire and train new staff to do those jobs at a factory. And for that reason, you don't necessarily want your product to be made right after the Chinese New Year as well. So what's going to make this very interesting is that because, travel has been restricted to certain provinces, people who may live in Wuhan but maybe work on the coast have a harder time getting back, or maybe they just decide, you know what, heck with it, I'm not going back. So as time passes and factory production can't ramp up, we have an even bigger challenge with getting orders that were pre-existing out and getting new orders filled. Never mind the fact that none of these factories are vertically integrated, meaning they don't make every little detail on the item that you're buying, right down to the packaging or the maybe the header card or whatever, or the box. Those are all supplied by other vendors. And even the printing on the box, all of those things that you never think about that go into, think about it. When you're in a store today and just look at an item that's packaged and think about all of the different things that go into not even the item, but just the packaging. Then look at the item and realize that, maybe if it's an item that has a battery or a microprocessor, chances are that was bought from another supplier. And then, maybe there are rubber pieces on a plastic device, and those are all tooled in different factories. So you could have 15 or 20 different factories making one small item. When one of those factories is based in Wuhan or somewhere near Wuhan, but the other factories are based maybe on the coasts, they're up and running, but the one in Wuhan isn't. So of those 20 items that go into building the one item, 19 are available, one isn't. Then what happens? Everything goes to a grinding halt. So it may not affect us. Maybe over the next couple of weeks this becomes a non-factor, but this has the potential to disrupt supply chain and make it very challenging for retailers to get items. And what that will probably do in the temporary is the law of supply and demand. If supply is short, what happens to demand? It stays the same or increases. Well, the cost goes up. So be prepared, on top of the tariffs, to pay even more for items coming from China because they're harder to get. And wholesalers that already have the inventory will be inclined to throttle back, wanting to sell it more quickly, knowing that if there isn't more coming behind it, they can jack up the price in the short term. Just another rant on coronavirus and how it could affect you even if you never come down with it.